Thanks everyone for joining our presentation. We are Team CollabCloud, and our application today is CollabCloud. So CollabCloud is an online social networking platform that is designed to help connect aspiring student developers to other tech enthusiasts and students like themselves to encourage collaboration on open source projects. Motivation and inspiration for this project came from something that we found was lacking in GitHub. So one thing that we wanted to see in GitHub was a recommendation engine that actually let us learn about new projects that we could work on. And there's no such feature that we could find in GitHub, which is why we wanted to create CollabCloud to solve this problem. So let's introduce our team now. So my name is Matthew. I worked on the project features, which is saving GitHub projects, um, joining, leaving projects, and project modifications.
Hello, I'm Furqan, and I worked on user management and routes.
Hi, my name is Jarrod. I was the product manager for CollabCloud, and I worked as a full stack engineer. The features that I worked on were forum, project requests, user and project page, and image uploading. I'll also be running the demo later on in the presentation.
Hi, my name is Rahul, and I mainly worked on the create project and the registration features, specifically the create projects route and the registration routes.
My name is Daniil. I worked on the landing page, the login page, as well as a couple of features on the dashboard, such as hackathons and training projects.
Hi, my name is Michael. I worked full stack and also did database management. Some features I worked on included registration, user profile, and recommendation.
Hi, my name is Hans, and I worked on the register feature, the GitHub authentication feature, the chat feature, and the search feature.
Okay, so with that being said, we're going to move on and talk about our software architecture now. So during the initial planning phase of CollabCloud, it was clear to us that the platform had many moving parts within the front end, back end, and database. So for this reason, we decided to use the three-tier architecture. As a social networking platform, we're expected to serve multiple concurrent users and have a system set in place to make real-time updates based on links and messages, which we believe fit the architecture the best. So I'll go into a bit more detail for each layer. So if we look here, the client layer is the topmost layer of the application. It's the only layer that the user is able to view and interact with. And the main function of this layer is to accept user input and then display output based on any user requests. The application layer is responsible for the handling the business logic of the application, and it also acts as a middleman between the client layer and the database. It takes requests in from the client, for example, and then sends them to the database, and then the database serves any data to the client. And the bottommost layer is our database layer, which is responsible for storing all of the data required for our application. And this ranges from user information to GitHub repo information to chat logs. So if we look at this diagram here, this is just this illustrates what I was talking about in the previous slide with the client, middleware, and database layer. So you can see here in the client, we're using Express and Node.js. This is the most important part because it connects everything in our application together, and we'll go into a bit more detail of the technologies later on. So now we're going to talk about our development process. So we followed the agile methodology, meaning that we had 2-week sprints, daily stand-ups, and sprint retros, etc. So some tools that we found helpful were that we have our code hosted on GitHub. We had weekly in-person team meetings. Our Scrum stand-ups were hosted on Microsoft Teams. And also team communication was done through WhatsApp. So some of the techniques that we found helped improve our process include knowledge sharing in Google Docs and sprint.md files. So we record any meetings we have and any stand-ups, and we write them down here. We also write down architecture and how things work, and this kind of helps out because if anyone is kind of stuck, they can always just refer back to the documentation to see how everything works. Another technique that we found was helpful was creating some team standardized conventions. So the next slide here. So what we found helpful was that we had one thing that we had to do was everyone had to review pull requests on their own machines. This meaning that everyone had to pull code and then test the code to see if there are any bugs or anything, and this helped us minimize the number of bugs that popped up in our program. One other thing we used emojis in our Git commits. So this kind of helps us categorize different types of commits. For example, if you look at call 25, we can see that this is obviously a bug because of the bug right there. Some more techniques that we found were helpful was that we would alert team members whenever we change environment variables or install new packages. As I mentioned earlier, we also had like in-person meetings. So in these meetings, we'd do internal team demos. So we'd show each other like what we've done, and we'd also integrate all our features before sprint demos in person. One thing that we could have worked on was something that we identified early on, actually, in our sprint. So we used to have multiple team members working on the same feature, meaning like we'd have one person, for example, for projects, we'd have one person working on the front end and back end. But we found that this type of work actually kind of fragmented our workflow, and it made things less efficient because we had to have constant communication. So we just found it a bit easier to actually have one person be responsible for both the back end and front end, and this helped us a lot in the later sprints. So now I'll talk about the technologies that we used. On the server side, we used Node. This was the JavaScript runtime environment for running JavaScript on our server side. Express, as I mentioned before, is part of our middleware. We used express routes for the front end to be able to communicate with our backend. Socket.io was used for live chatting. We used PostgreSQL as our database, and SQLized.js as an ORM that's basically a wrapper on top of Postgres, so we could access different types of queries. We also used JSON Web Tokens for user auth on the server side. And in terms of the client, we used React for our UI components, Socket.io for maintaining live chatting from the client side, Redux for maintaining client application state, local storage to maintain data on the browser that needs to persist between page refreshes, and then JWT, again, for authentication, for example, 404 pages. And lastly, we just had some technical challenges that we wanted to talk about. So the biggest technical challenge that we ran into was using Redux. This is a very new technology to our team. Only one person on our team actually knew Redux beforehand. So it was a challenge for everyone to learn and use this while we were learning and building the application. And we felt that this technology was something that would help for a project of this scope. Another technical challenge was learning how to interface with the GitHub API. So the way our login and registration works is that we need to connect with the GitHub API first to get like an auth token. So we had to like read the docs and figure out how this worked. A lot of us also did not know web development beforehand. So while we were working on like sprint 1 and 2, team members were also learning a lot about the MERN stack. And the last challenge we had was with Socket.io, which was a new concept to all members, which we had to understand to integrate with chat. So that's all for the slides, and now Jarrod's gonna demo the product.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So let me just bring you over to the application. Firstly, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent. Yes, all of us can
Okay.
hear you. I think. Yeah.
So right off the bat, we're greeted with this landing page right here, and let's just get into it and just register. So as we mentioned before, it's built on top of GitHub. So using GitHub, we're able to access the user's repository so that they can easily load that in and work with that. So let's just hop right into it. Gonna authorize, and there you go. So let's register right here. And then right here we see these interested languages slash technologies. So based on this, what our application does is it'll recommend you projects based on your interests. And we'll see that later on. Read the service. All right, submit. So we've successfully registered, and let's just jump into it. So this is the dashboard. Currently, there's not much to show because we haven't started messing around with it. But as I mentioned earlier, this is the recommendations. So based on the what technologies that we put in, we're seeing these right here. Okay, so let's just let's create a project. So let's say I want to create one for CSE 301. I could also import one of my existing ones. So let's just grab this one. And as you can see, after clicking that, it fills out all the information and submit. So it shows up right over here. And let's take a look. So currently I'm the only contributor and all of the information shown is right there. So actually let's add an image. Let's see. I'll just grab a random one. There you go. And okay, so now that my project, I'm gonna try to find some collaborators. So this is one of two of our communication features, the forum. So let's go to collabs. Hey guys, anyone wanna work on a web app with me for school? Serious inquiries only. Okay, so let's submit that, and then you'll see it's right there. Okay, cool. And I'm just gonna open up a new one and log into another account. Let's say this one right here. Just quick refresh for the avatar. Okay, cool. So this is a user that we've kind of messed around with, but it's got some. It shows you how the dashboard actually fills out as your activity increases. So let's go to the forum, collabs, and this one right here. Sure. Send me a request. Cool. So if we go here, also I may have to relog because I think I logged out. Yeah, my bad. So I'm just gonna relog in, and then we can see that since he posted on our thread, I got this notification right here. Click this button, view the thread. Nice. Okay, so Lance Bongo. So let's add this guy to our project. So if I go back here to ensure app, I'm gonna request Lance Bongo. There you go. It's pending. And if I log into here, I should just this in incognito. So if I on Lance's account, I'm gonna see this right here, ensure app, request to join it. I'm gonna hit that, join the project, and then now I've been added as a collaborator. And if I go over here onto this account, refresh, there you go, he's been added. Okay, cool. So now that I've got a collaborator, let's talk to him about like our project. So send him a message. What tech stack are you comfortable with? And over here on Lance's account, I'm gonna open these up side by side so it's a bit easier to see for you guys. Oops, my bad. So if you go here on Lance's account, we see that we received this notification. So okay, so I'm gonna go over to chat, open that up. I'm gonna open that up, yeah. So I'm good at programming. And with our use of Socket.io, we're able to send these messages in real time. Awesome. So I've got a collaborator. I made a project, and I'm using our social features to talk to them. So let's see. One last thing that I'd like to, or one of the last things I'd like to go over is our profile. So this is my account. You can add an avatar and then also add information. So I'm just gonna flesh this out. Let's see. Okay, update that, and then let's also update our avatar. That's a picture of me, and refresh so the avatars there. Okay, awesome. So I was able to update my profile and an avatar. And as we can see, here are projects. Let's see. We could also check out a different user's profile and follow them. Oops. Okay. Wait, give me a sec. There you go. So we can also follow them. He's got 3 followers, pretty popular guy. And check out all of the projects that he has. So I'm just gonna bring you back to the dashboard. So now that I have done some activity, you can see how the dashboard has changed. So keeps track of your projects, incoming project requests, notifications for your projects, recent activity such as on your threads and your chats, recommendations, and we've also got this hackathons feature, so you can see what's coming up. Okay, so one last thing I would like to show is the security that we've got. So firstly, if you try to enter in the wrong URL, it gets to do 404, and this is also applied onto the project and forums pages, just because of how we dynamically do the URL. And if we log out and try to access the site, we're also redirected to the login. And I think that's about it. I think we're gonna bring it over to questions now. Oh, it went all the way to the start. Questions, yeah. If anyone's got them, please.
Yeah, there is 2 questions on the chat.
Let me swap
Okay.
that. Yeah.
3 actually.
Yeah, so I can answer Han Fang's question. So if we had more time, some things that we like to do is, since CollabCloud is a social networking platform, the one big unique feature of our platform is the recommendation engine. So we want to be able to improve that by matching users based on more criteria to provide more accurate recommendations. One more thing we could also work on is just to have increased security. For example, we can use like 2FA with email, and this will also let the user to reset their password if they forgot their password. So yeah, so one thing that we could have changed was just a bit of our architecture on the back end, probably with notifications. We just realized at the end that we could have made notifications a bit more widespread and used throughout the application. Because once we had like the initial framework done for notifications, we found that it was very easy to add more. So we probably would have just started working on that a bit earlier. And Shamir from Llamas asks, what was our experience working with the GitHub API? So for this, this is one of our technical challenges, and the hardest part was probably figuring out how to connect with the API and get the auth tokens. Because how our application works is that in Postgres, each user saves a GitHub auth token, and for every request that we make to the GitHub API, we have to send an auth token with the request. So the hardest part to get this token was to actually have to register with the GitHub API, and we just basically just read the docs and watched some videos, and Hans took care of that for us. So thank you, Hans.
So Salwa's question, he's asking if we can have multiple collaborators on one project, and can a collaborator remove themselves from the
Oh,
project?
sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah, we can have multiple collaborators. I can actually show you it right now. But basically, once you join, you can actually leave. I think, nope. You don't need the owner's permission to leave. So if you just see here, it says leave project, and we can leave. Yeah. And yep.
So I forgot to answer Lazar's question. I didn't see that before. So when the user creates their own account, that's when they have to specify what they're interested in. So we currently do not have that feature after registration. So that'll be something that we'd also have to add in the future.
I'll take Kana's question here. So
Sure.
she's asking if we had a lot of prior experience with this because of our documentation and extensive testing. So I think out of all of us, only 2 people have had prior work experience. So other than that, you know, it's just about we did do like a lot of research on project development and stuff. So we tried to do that where possible, and yeah, it really helped out.
For Sean's question, so we have not considered using continuous integration, but if we were, we probably just have some automated unit tests that run every time we make a pull request, and we just have to make sure these unit tests pass every time someone makes pull requests, and they'll probably just count for us as continuous integration. We probably look more into Jenkins and stuff for that. Daniil asks about auth from, okay, no problem, Sean, from GitHub. Hans, I'm not sure exactly what type of authentication you're using. Do you have?
I can answer that question. So the authentication that we're using is not what you're mentioning here, but we're using OAuth 2.0, and that's the authentication that that GitHub is currently using. So we just decided to use that as well. And also for 404s, you will get a 404 if you tried accessing a different project that you're not a member of. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Oh,
guys.
sorry.
I see like applause. Okay, so is there any questions that were not answered? Because there were tons of questions for this.
Yeah, there's just one more question. I can
Sure,
take
go,
here.
please.
So Brandon from Developers of the Millennium, he's curious about our process when we decided what APIs to use. So that kind of just starts from how we planned out our application. So we knew that we wanted to be built on top of GitHub just because of the resources that it had after we researched into it. So that was a kind of no-brainer, but we did find other APIs along the way, and such as the Imgur one, thanks to me asking around for the best way to upload images, which is how we uploaded the images for the project and the profile. So yeah, it's just planning, TLDR.
Yeah, so I think everybody is applauding and basically liking the project. Great, like one of the best projects so far, hands down. Oh, there is one more question, I think, from Ahmad on the chat.
Yeah. So Ahmed's question is, did we realize that we want to change anything after completing the project? Probably just a bit about the architecture. So for example, with notifications, we built that kind of in the last sprint, but we realized that after building notifications, it's very easy to add more notifications. So like we would probably just have like notifications whenever someone does like pretty much anything, because since it's a social media application, we kind of want to get users engaged. So we just want to have like more alerts and everything.
Okay, thank you so much, CollabCloud. Really great job. Thank you. So a big round of applause for your classmates from CollabCloud. All right, so next is programmers. Please do put your names on the chat so I can add you to the. Thank you, guys. Okay.